Warning: the following reading contains content that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Flash Sentry groaned as his eyes cracked open and he looked around the room he was currently inside. For some reason, he felt his left flank hurt and his chest was causing him a pain that he did not find pleasant, but he was too groggy to shift his head to examine. Suddenly, various speakers around the room crackled to life.
Removal test number 37 completed. Initiating test number 38.
He immediately called out for help, but no one answered, leaving him in absolute silence. He was laying on his back and was propped up a little, giving him a range to look around the room. The interior was dim and the place had several tables with objects on them, but most of them were impossible to make out. The closest object he could see was what appeared to be a glass cup with markings on it. What did the sundial at the Crystal Empire call it? A beaker? For that matter, where was he? He tried to recall any recent events, but all he could remember was patrolling the Empire's grounds before Twilight, the Princess of Friendship, went face first into him. She apologized to him and he said he was fine. She then asked him if he could assist her with an experiment about pony anatomy and the range of motion. Flash was a little confused about it and asked why she would need to know that since her library had a huge range of book topics, most likely including pony anatomy. She merely said books can only go so far and promised him that it wouldn't take too long. Twilight also said she already asked Princess Cadence for permission and his assistance. She said it would not take any more than a day and only consisted of limb movement and reaction to different forms of stimuli, all of which were not painful. Flash Sentry was going to go to Cadence anyway, but if Twilight said it was okay, then it would be fine. Besides, if it meant helping one of the 4 matriarchs of Equestria with the future, then he was all for it. Smiling, Flash nodded and accompanied her to the train to Ponyville. After boarding the train, Twilight led him to a personal compartment reserved for her. She turned to look at him with a smile on her face, but something was amiss with the smile.
"One more thing,"
she said, and before Flash could reply, her horn flashed and his world went black. Flash shook his head from the memory and looked around the room as he tried to move his legs but couldn't as he found himself restrained. Panic set in as he pulled and tugged at his bindings, but to no avail as they held him firm on the table. Suddenly, he heard a door open and some light poured into the room down a set of stairs.
Hello? Hey, can you help me? I'm down here.
He shouted out and heard hoofsteps descend stairs. After a few seconds of hoof tapping, he saw a lavender light make its way into existence. Flash squinted and saw it was coming from Twilight's horn.
"Oh, good."
She said with merriment.
"Subject number 002 has regained consciousness. Now we can continue the project."
She smiled with satisfaction as she levitated up a clipboard and jotted something down.
What? What? What are you talking about? Where am I?
He asked, and she stopped writing.
"Oh, right. Sorry. Sometimes I forget about things when I get overexcited about producers going so well. Here, let me get the lights for you,"
she said, and with a small shimmer of her horn, he was nearly blinded on the spot as several floodlights blasted into being, coating the entire room into a harsh white light. After several seconds of blinking away the intense light, Flash started looking around the room, but the first thing that caught his attention was his barrel and chest. That was a lot of blood. Granted, it was not flowing out of him, but his normally dark gold coat was now coated with the dark red of his own blood. Panicking, Flash pulled desperately at his binding just like before. They held him in place. He tried to flap his wings, but they did not move. In fact, he couldn't feel them at all. Turning his head left to look, his eyes widened in horror as he saw a sutured patch on his flesh where his wing usually connected to his body. Spinning his head to the other side, he also saw that his right wing was also gone. Spinning back with absolute fear, He turned to look at Twilight with fear in his eyes.
What? What have you done?
He asked, and was even more shocked to see her donning a blood-stained lab coat with various sharp tools poking out of various pockets. She just smiled at him like he was tasty candy.
Oh, nothing much. Just doing what I can in the name of progress for Equestria. And for me, of course.
She said as she pointed to his left across the room. He followed her direction and was mortified to see a creature posted on a stand with tubes and wires running in and out of it. It was a bipedal creature that stood like Discord, the spirit of chaos, but it lacked a coat and its digits were less sharp than claws or talons. Furthermore, it had a mane style much like Flash's mane, and the skin color was identical to his coat. To his horror, Flash saw his rings were now protruding from the back of this living being. What was going on? What was wrong with Princess Twilight? Why did she... Suddenly, something clicked into his mind. Twilight had described these creatures when she traveled to another world. What did she call them? Humans? It certainly fit the bill, but if so, what was this human doing here? And why did he look so much like Flash? As if on cue, Twilight replied with glee as she levitated a used scalpel from her coat and rinsed the blood off in a nearby sink.
You see, when I went to another world to go get my crown back from the previous protege of Princess Celestia, I ran into a version of you. And over a period I was there, we became quite close. Unfortunately, I could not stay forever. Over the years, I found a way to go back and visit him. But that time was limited. We were always meant to be separated because of the laws of the universe. One day, I went through the portal. I saw him looking at the same protege and became quite jealous. I did not want to lose him. I never wanted to lose him!
Twilight said with sudden anger as she stabbed the scalpel into his right hind leg, and he screamed for a moment before being muffled with the cloth shoved in his mouth.
Oh, hush now. My friends are upstairs. And I would find it rude if you interrupted Pinkie Pie's cake frosting record.
She said as she took a marker and dotted several lines across his stomach. His eyes widened again, and he started to whimper. Twilight just rolled her eyes.
Oh, it's not that bad. I am just going to make an incision and remove an organ from your body and replace it with a small device that will function just like that organ, even though it's not really there.
She said almost automatically as she glanced at two anatomy books, one depicting a pony and one depicting a human. Flash was still pulling at his restraints as he tried anything to get out of this and inform Princess Celestia of what was going on. However, like all the other times, the bonds were just as close to breaking as they were before.
Just stay still now. The sooner we get through this, the sooner you can rest.
She then smiled as if she read his mind.
And don't think my teachers or the rest of Equestria will be coming to find you. You see, I have found two specific spells. One is a duplication spell, which makes a copy of a pony. The other is a suggestion spell, and with it, I can make an individual do anything I want. Why am I telling you this? Because I created a copy of you and sent him on a murder spree. He's currently serving time in Tartarus after killing 4 adults in 2 falls! Also, what your mother said on the trial stand about him? Or you. She was so disappointed.
Twilight said and looked like she was about to cry, but he knew by her posture that she was faking. Flash, on the other hand, was in tears. He would never do anything like that. He made an oath to protect Equestria, not harm its citizens. Twilight let out a small exhale and looked at him.
Now, where were we? Oh yeah, we were going to remove your liver. Now please hold still. I don't want to cause massive internal bleeding as I remove it.
She said as she positioned the scalpel over his stomach and lowered the blade. Flash screamed through his gag as the razor edge penetrated the flesh and his chest erupted in pain as blood came out and flowed over his barrel. He struggled and pulled and yanked at his bindings with all his might as his flesh tore with the blade. He watched in fear as pieces of his flesh and muscles flopped open as he saw his ribcage and organs on full display for the world to see. But that was not all as he witnessed several pieces of metal jutting from his stomach. He nearly blacked out as he choked in pain and blood, but a small whirring of the machine inside yanked him back into consciousness.
Usually this would not be possible, but with the help of guided cutting, these devices, and a little bit of necromancy, we would not be here right now.
She said as she gleefully levitated a book behind her titled The Fearless Guide to Necromancy and put it back down. She levitated a small mechanical box and held it in the air beside her.
Why don't you say hello to this little gizmo of mine, which will soon be yours? This will act as your liver indefinitely and will not fail you.
She said as she repositioned the scalpel for his liver. He still could not help the screaming as every part of his body was on fire and more pain came in as she cut the flesh that bound the liver to his body. It seemed to go on forever, but then with a small but excruciating cut, he felt violated as a piece of his body was taken away and placed into the nearby ice chest. Flash started to involuntary spasm as his body, now with the missing organ, was failing him. Twilight did not miss a beat as she put the device in his chest. With the whir and a snap that felt like the machine was pulling on his insides, he felt his spasms lessen and disappear. If it was not for the fact that she was dissected him, he would have thought of her as a technical genius. She smiled as she moved his pieces of skin back into place, and with a flash of magic, the incisions that she made nicked back together until he was left with a damage-free coat, if it wasn't for the brand new layer of blood on his chest.
Now, was that so bad?
She asked.
Yes! Now, I will have your memories of this experience removed, and we will wait a week for you to regain all the blood you lost, and start the next test. Remove another part. We will keep this up until I have all the organs to make my perfect lover! And I will make him love me too.
She said as she squealed with delight and pranced in a circle. She then stopped and blinked.
And, well, of course, for the future of Equestria. Now we just need to...
Suddenly, the door up the stairs smashed open and Flash heard several hoofbeats thudding down the stairs.
She's downstairs! Move! Move! Move!
Someone shouted as he turned his eyes. He saw the golden armor of the Royal Guard thunder down the stairs and circle him in Twilight. Flash screamed to them through the cloth, but was stopped with Twilight holding the scalpel up into his neck.
Stay back! Get back! I order you! You have no right to...
She started, but a Pegasus mare smashed into her from the side. A unicorn overrode her magic and the blade moved away from his neck. If it was not for the ride of adrenaline, Flash would have sighed in relief. The Pegasus mare and two other soldiers pinned her to the floor and slipped the magic containment ring over her horn.
But I can!
A feminine and dignified voice boomed from the doorway. Flash looked up and saw the regal form of Princess Celestia descended the stairs and looked to Twilight and then to him. She smiled to reassure him. She lit her horn and the gag came out of his mouth, giving him a chance to cough and spit out saliva and blood.
I understand this is not the best question, given your circumstances. But I need to ask, are you okay?
He coughed again and tried to smile at her.
Better now that you're here, Your Majesty.
He said, and her smile grew wider before turning to face Twilight with an angered look.
Twilight, for your sins to Equestria, I condemn you to serve an eternity in Tartarus, where you may think about what you have done to this country and this innocent soul.
Celestia said, gesturing to Flash.
Furthermore, I strip you of your title and any power it carries.
She nodded to the soldiers and they carried her off.
No! No,
She screamed and turned to look at the human Flash still unconscious on the stand.
Please, Flash! Wake up! Help me!
She screamed, but the human stayed still. She still screamed at him even after she was carried through the door by the two Pegasi. After they were gone, Celestia stepped forward to Flash and looked to the small chest with Flash's liver inside with mild disgust, and then to the human Flash.
I am so sorry for what happened with my student. I did not know she would do something this cruel and immoral. I want you to know that everything is going to be fine.
She said as a small mirror with a clean lab coat came down the stairs to join her.
We will find everything that she stole from you and put you back together. When you come back, you will be in Canterlot Medical Hospital with your mother next to your bed and a huge compensation for all of your troubles.
Flash smiled as the unicorn lit her horn with a green aura.
Thank you, Princess.
He closed his eyes as the medical unicorn moved closer, touching his brow with her horn, and he passed out knowing that he would be alright. Flash Sentry groaned as his eyes cracked open and he looked around the room he was in. For some reason, he felt his flank hurt and his chest was giving him a pain that he did not find comfortable but was too groggy to shift his head to look. Not to mention the stab of pain he felt in his right leg. Suddenly, several speakers around the room crackled to life.
Removal of test number 38 completed. Initiating test number 39.